March 15th, 2004. Tuzla Air Base, Bosnia. Staff Sergeant Rex had been Colonel Mac Brennan's partner for 3 tours, the dog who'd saved his life twice. That's exactly why Command ordered Mac to leave him behind when the chemical alarm sounded. 23 soldiers evacuated that bunker in under 90 seconds. Rex stayed. Mac watched through night vision as his partner collapsed, foam pouring from his muzzle, scratching at the sealed door. What happened in those final moments became the most classified incident in Delta Force history. The Pentagon buried the files. Mac buried the guilt, and for 20 years, whenever Mac closed his eyes, he saw Rex's final message scratched into that bunker floor. Today, Kaiser found Rex's collar, on Mac's own property. Someone had been waiting. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. German Shepherd's hackles bristled as Mac crouched beside the excavated earth, Rex's weathered collar gleaming in the Virginia afternoon sun. 20 years of guilt crystallized into something sharper, fear. Someone had buried his dead partner's collar on his own land. Someone who knew exactly what happened in that bunker. Kaiser whined, nudging Mac's shoulder with his massive head. The dog's amber eyes held an intensity Mac recognized from countless missions, the look of a K9 detecting imminent danger. Mac's fingers traced the familiar grooves of Rex's ID tag, muscle memory from 1,000 equipment checks flooding back, serial number 2847, blood type, vaccination dates, all exactly as he remembered. But Rex had died in Bosnia. Mac had seen the foam, heard the final scratches against steel. The Pentagon's cleanup crew had incinerated everything. Bodies, equipment, evidence. They'd told Mac that Rex's remains were sanitized along with the rest of the site. So how was his partner's collar buried 3 feet deep behind Mac's barn in Fauquier County? The late March wind carried the scent of rain, and something else, diesel fuel, faint but distinct. Mac's combat instincts kicked in as he scanned the tree line bordering his property. 40 acres of rolling hills and oak forest, every sightline memorized over 15 years of ownership. Nothing moved except the branches swaying overhead. Kaiser's ears swiveled toward the eastern ridge. The shepherd's body language shifted into high alert, tail rigid, muscles coiled. Mac had trained enough military working dogs to read the signs. Someone was out there. "Easy, boy." Mac's voice carried the calm authority that had kept him alive through 3 decades of special operations. His hand instinctively moved to his hip, finding empty space. He'd stopped carrying on his own property years ago, a decision that now seemed dangerously naive. The diesel smell grew stronger. Mac rose slowly, Rex's collar clutched in his fist, and back toward the barn. His secure radio was mounted inside his workshop, and a loaded Sig Sauer waited in the tool chest. 40 yards. He could make it if the crack of a branch snapping echoed from the woods. Kaiser erupted into motion, charging toward the sound with the fluid power of his German bloodlines. Mac's training screamed at him to recall the dog, but Kaiser had already vanished into the underbrush. The shepherd's barking Dopplered away as he pursued something deeper into the forest. "Kaiser, return!" Mac's command cut through the air, but the barking continued, growing more frantic. Then it stopped. The sudden silence raised every hair on Mac's neck. In 30 years of working with military dogs, he'd learned that silence meant 2 things. The dog had found his target, or the dog was down. Mac sprinted toward the tree line, muscle memory overriding 15 years of civilian caution. His boots hit the deer trail that wound through the oaks, following the path Kaiser had taken. Broken branches and disturbed leaves marked the shepherd's passage. 200 yards in, Mac found Kaiser standing rigid beside an ancient oak, his attention fixed on something in the tree's massive hollow. The dog's tail wagged once. The signal Mac had drilled into him for target acquired non-hostile. Mac approached cautiously, every sense heightened. The hollow was deep enough to conceal a man, carved out by decades of rot and weather. Inside, wrapped in military-grade plastic, sat a metal case, the kind used for classified documents. Mac's blood turned to ice water. The case bore faded stenciling, Operation Lazarus to eyes only. Below that, a date that made his knees buckle. March 15th, 2004. The day Rex died. Lazarus. Mac had never heard that operation name. According to every debrief, every classified report he'd been allowed to see, their mission in Bosnia had been designated Operation Clearwater, a routine inspection of suspected chemical weapons caches. But routine missions didn't require leaving K9 partners behind to die. Mac lifted the case from the hollow with trembling hands. The lock had been broken, recently by the look of the fresh scratches in the metal. Someone had opened this case, read its contents, then left it for him to find. The same someone who'd buried Rex's collar behind his barn. Inside, yellowed documents bore the letterhead of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Mission parameters, personnel files, chemical analysis reports. Mac's own service photo stared back at him from a personnel sheet marked Test Subject Alpha 7. Test Subject. The words hit him like incoming fire. Mac's vision blurred as he scanned the documents. Rex's death hadn't been a casualty of war. It had been part of an experiment. The chemical weapons they'd been sent to investigate weren't enemy assets waiting to be secured. They were American nerve agents, and Mac's unit had been the guinea pigs. 20 years of survivor's guilt transformed into something deadlier. Rage. Someone in his own government had murdered Rex, had tried to murder his entire unit, and had been watching Mac ever since. Waiting for what? For him to remember something? To discover something? Kaiser whined softly, pressing against Mac's leg. The shepherd sensed his handler's distress, offering the unconditional loyalty that had defined every military working dog Mac had ever known. The same loyalty that had killed Rex. Mac's hands shook as he closed the case, the metal clasps echoing like rifle bolts in the forest silence. 20 years of carefully constructed peace, gone. The life he'd built here in the Virginia hills, the quiet sanctuary he'd carved from rolling pastures and morning mist, suddenly felt as fragile as paper. Kaiser pressed closer, the shepherd's warmth grounding Mac in the present moment. The dog's amber eyes held unwavering trust, the same blind faith Rex had carried into that bunker in Bosnia. The same faith that had gotten Rex killed. "Not you," Mac whispered, his calloused fingers working through Kaiser's thick coat. "I won't let them take you too." The diesel scent had faded, but Mac's instincts told him they were still being watched. Someone had orchestrated this discovery with surgical precision. The buried collar, the hidden case, even Kaiser's relentless digging. Nothing accidental about any of it. Mac tucked the case under his arm and started back toward the barn, Kaiser ranging ahead with military precision. The shepherd quartered the trail, nose working the wind patterns Mac had taught him during their first months together. Good dog. Smart dog. The kind of partner who'd die for his handler without hesitation. The thought twisted something deep in Mac's chest. They emerged from the woods as the sun broke through gathering storm clouds, casting long shadows across Mac's property. 40 acres of heaven, his ex-wife Sarah used to call it before the nightmares and silences drove her away, before Rex's death had hollowed him out so completely that even love couldn't fill the void. The training facility spread across the eastern pasture. Obstacle courses, scent houses, a quarter-mile track where Mac put police and military dogs through their paces. 15 years building this place, transforming his grief into purpose. Every dog he'd trained had gone on to save lives, detect bombs, find lost children. It was honest work, clean work. Now, even that felt tainted. His cell phone buzzed against his hip. Mac glanced at the screen and felt his throat tighten. Sarah's photo smiled back at him, her dark hair catching sunlight from a happier time. She only called for 2 reasons these days: their daughter Emma's birthday, or when something was wrong. "Mac? Thank God you answered." Sarah's voice carried an edge he hadn't heard since their divorce 5 years ago. "I know this sounds paranoid, but I think someone's been watching the house." The case felt heavier under Mac's arm. What kind of watching? A van parked across the street for 3 days running. Different times, same vehicle, Maryland plates. And yesterday... She paused, and Mac heard Emma's laughter in the background. 12 years old now, growing up fast. Too fast. Yesterday when I picked him up from soccer practice, I swear the same van was in the school parking lot. Mac's blood turned to ice. They weren't just watching him, they were watching his family. The only people left in the world who mattered. Sarah, listen to me carefully. Pack a bag for you and Emma. Go to your sister's place in Richmond, right now. Mac, you're scaring me. What's going on? 20 years of keeping secrets, of protecting them from the darkness that followed him home from every mission. But the darkness had found them anyway. I can't explain over the phone. Just go. I'll call you tonight. Daddy issues acting up again? Sarah's voice carried old pain, the accumulated weight of a marriage slowly crushed under the burden of classified ghosts. Something like that. Please, Sarah, trust me one more time. A long silence. Then 2 hours. We'll be at Linda's. The line went dead, and Max stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Emma's gap-toothed grin from last Christmas gazed back at him from the wallpaper. His little girl, who still believed her father was a hero instead of a government lab rat who'd outlived his usefulness. Kaiser whined, sensing the shift in Mac's emotional state. The shepherd leaned against his handler's leg, offering comfort the only way he knew how. Mac knelt and cupped Kaiser's massive head in his hands, looking into those intelligent amber eyes. You found something they didn't want found, didn't you, boy? And now they're going to clean house. Thunder rumbled overhead as the storm clouds gathered strength. Rain was coming, the kind of soaking downpour that would wash away tracks, scents, evidence. Perfect weather for wet work. Mac rose and shouldered the classified case, his mind already shifting into operational mode. 15 years of civilian life had softened his edges, but the training ran bone deep. They'd made him into a weapon, then tried to dispose of him when the mission was complete. Time to remind them that broken weapons could still cut. The first drops of rain spattered against the barn roof as Mac and Kaiser reached the workshop. Inside, surrounded by the familiar smells of gun oil and leather, Mac began preparing for war. Hands moved with muscle memory as he opened the gun safe, the familiar weight of the Sig Sauer bringing a cold comfort he hadn't felt in years. 2 spare magazines, tactical flashlight, the ceramic knife that wouldn't show up on metal detectors. His go-bag from the old days still hung in the back corner, gathering dust like a retired soldier's uniform. Kaiser circled the workshop, agitated. The shepherd's ears swiveled toward every sound. Rain drumming on the roof, wind rattling the windows, the distant rumble of thunder. Or maybe something else entirely. The landline phone mounted on Mac's workbench rang. Mac froze, the Sig halfway to his shoulder holster. Nobody called the landline anymore. Sarah used his cell. His training clients scheduled through email. The only people who still had that number were... The phone rang again. Sharp, insistent. Max stared at the device like it might explode. 3 rings. 4. On the 5th ring, his hand moved almost by itself, lifting the receiver to his ear. Marcus. The voice that answered hit him like a sledgehammer to the chest. Gravelly, precise, carrying the weight of command that had shaped Mac's life for 15 years. Hello, son. Colonel William Hayes, his former commanding officer. The man who'd sent him into that bunker in Bosnia 20 years ago. The man who'd looked Mac in the eye afterward and sworn that Rex's death was an unfortunate casualty of war. The man whose signature was on every document in that classified case. You son of a bitch. Mac's voice came out steady, controlled. Delta Force training ran deeper than rage. Hayes chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Now. That's no way to greet your old company. I hear you've been doing some digging, Marcus. Literally. Mac's grip tightened on the phone. Rex's collar. You planted it. Rex was a good dog. Loyal to the end. Just like you, son. That's why we chose your unit for Lazarus. Loyalty's a rare commodity in our line of work. We were test subjects. The words tasted like poison. You used us as lab rats for your nerve agent experiment. We used volunteers, patriots, men who understood that sometimes soldiers have to make the ultimate sacrifice for their country. We never volunteered for anything. We thought we were securing enemy weapons. Details. Hayes's voice hardened. What matters is that you survived. The chemical exposure should have killed you in 6 months. The fact that you're still breathing 20 years later makes you valuable. Mac's blood turned to ice. The nightmares, the memory gaps, the way sounds sometimes echoed strangely in his head. He'd attributed it all to PTSD, to Rex's death, to the accumulated trauma of 3 decades in special operations. But it wasn't trauma. It was the nerve agent, still working its way through his system 2 decades later. You've been watching me. It wasn't a question. Monitoring, medical surveillance. You're our longest surviving test case, Marcus. 20 years of data walking around in a body that should have been dead before Bush left office. Kaiser's hackles rose, a low growl building in the shepherd's throat. The dog sensed danger with the preternatural awareness that made German shepherds perfect for military work. What do you want, Hayes? What I've always wanted. Your cooperation, your silence, your understanding that some secrets are bigger than one man's conscience. And if I refuse, the pause stretched long enough for Mac to hear rain drumming against the workshop windows. When Hayes spoke again, his voice carried the casual tone of a man ordering coffee. I'd hate for anything to happen to that lovely family of yours. Emma's quite the soccer player, isn't she? Takes after her father's athletic ability. The workshop tilted around Mac. They weren't just watching him, they were watching Emma, his 12-year-old daughter, who still hugged him like he was her hero instead of a walking biological experiment. Touch my family and I'll... You'll what? Go to the media? Who's going to believe a PTSD-addled ex-soldier spinning conspiracy theories about 20-year-old classified operations? Face it, Marcus. You're a ghost. Officially, Operation Lazarus never happened. Your unit was never exposed. Rex died saving you from enemy chemical weapons, just like the reports say. Mac's vision blurred at the edges. The nerve agent. It was still in his system, still eating away at his neural pathways like acid through copper wire. There's a car coming up your drive right now. Hayes continued conversationally. My colleagues are very eager to discuss your future with the program. I suggest you cooperate. For Emma's sake, the line went dead. Through the workshop window, Mac saw headlights cutting through the rain. A black sedan moving slowly up his gravel drive. Professional, careful. The kind of vehicle that disappeared from memory 5 minutes after you saw it. Kaiser barked once. Sharp, urgent. Enemy contact. Mac holstered the cig and grabbed his go-bag. The classified case went into his jacket, the documents that proved his life had been a lie pressed against his ribs like a tumor. Time to run. Time to remember what he'd been before they turned him into a lab rat. Time to become dangerous again. Mac killed the workshop lights and moved to the back window, Kaiser pressed against his leg like a shadow. The black sedan had stopped halfway up the drive, tactical positioning that left room for backup vehicles while maintaining an escape route. Professional work. The kind of professionals who cleaned up loose ends with bureaucratic efficiency. Stay close, Mac whispered. Kaiser's ears flicked acknowledgement. The shepherd's body coiled for action. Mac's phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Your daughter's soccer game is at 4 p.m. Saturday. Would hate for her to miss it. The message deleted itself as he watched. His hands shook as he shouldered the go-bag. Emma was safe at Sarah's sister's house, for now, but Hayes had made his point clear: cooperation or consequences. The sedan's doors opened with muffled clicks. 2 figures emerged, moving with the fluid coordination of operators. Mac caught the distinctive profile of tactical gear under their rain jackets. These weren't bureaucrats coming for a friendly chat. Mac eased the workshop's rear door open and slipped into the storm. Rain lashed his face as he and Kaiser moved along the barn's shadow line, using the building to mask their movement from the approaching team. The familiar weight of operational gear steadied his nerves. Muscle memory from 100 infiltrations, 1,000 nights moving through hostile territory. But this was his property. His sanctuary. The place where he'd tried to forget what men like Hayes had turned him into. Kaiser's nose worked the wind patterns, cataloging scents that Mac's damaged nervous system couldn't detect. The shepherd's tail remained rigid, alert posture, but not full combat mode. Whatever else these people were, they weren't immediate physical threats. They were something worse. They were people Kaiser couldn't bite his way through. Mac's secure radio crackled to life in his ear, a frequency he hadn't used in 15 years. The emergency channel from his Delta days, supposedly decommissioned after his unit disbanded. Mockingbird, this is Control. Hayes's voice, calm as death. We know you're listening. Mac nearly responded before catching himself. Standard interrogation technique. Make the target feel isolated, then offer them a voice in the darkness. He'd used it himself in Syria, Afghanistan, half a dozen countries whose names were still classified. Your vitals are elevated, Hayes continued. Stress response indicates severe agitation. That's the nerve agent talking, son. It's been eating holes in your brain for 20 years. You need medical attention. Through the rain, Max saw the tactical team splitting up. One moving toward the house, the other circling toward the training facilities. Standard search pattern for a property this size. They'd find his escape routes in minutes. We can help you, Hayes said. State-of-the-art treatment. The kind of medical care that comes with unlimited funding and no questions asked. All we need is your continued cooperation. Kaiser pressed closer, the shepherd's warmth cutting through the cold rain. Mac's fingers found the familiar comfort of the dog's collar, solid leather and steel that reminded him why Rex had died. Not for God and country, for the ambitions of men who treated soldiers like lab equipment. The radio crackled again. Your silence tells me you're considering options. Good. You always were the smart one in your unit, the survivor. Mac's throat constricted, his unit, 7 men and their K9 partners, all dead within 3 years of Bosnia. Training accidents, car crashes, suicides, the kind of statistical anomaly that would raise red flags if anyone cared enough to investigate. But nobody investigated classified suicides. Thompson lasted 18 months after exposure, Hayes said conversationally. Neural degeneration, violent outbursts, then that unfortunate incident with his service weapon. Garcia made it 2 years before the cancer took him. You're our miracle case, Marcus. 20 years and still functional. The tactical team member near the house spoke into his radio, too quiet for Mac to hear, but the cadence was wrong. Nervous. Professional operators didn't get nervous about extracting one middle-aged ex-soldier. Unless their target wasn't quite as his file suggested. Your old friends remember you fondly, Hayes continued. Sergeant Rodriguez from 5th Group sends his regards. So does Major Patterson from JSOC. They're all very interested in your unique medical situation. Mac's blood turned to ice. Rodriguez had been dead for 10 years, roadside bomb in Iraq. Patterson died in a training accident at Bragg. Hayes wasn't just threatening him with old friends. He was threatening him with ghosts. The radio fell silent, leaving only the rain and the sound of boots squelching through mud. The tactical team was closing in, but something about their movement patterns felt wrong. Too cautious for a simple extraction. Too elaborate for intimidation. They weren't here to take him. They were here to make sure he understood he could never run far enough. Kaiser's hackles rose suddenly, a low whine building in the shepherd's throat. Not fear, recognition. The dog had caught a scent that triggered some deep memory, some association that made his combat-trained instincts scream warnings. Mac followed Kaiser's gaze toward the tree line where they'd found the case. Someone else was out there in the dark. Kaiser's whine cut through the rain like a knife, and Mac felt the world tilt sideways. The scent the dog had caught wasn't random. It was specific, targeted, familiar in a way that made Mac's damaged neurons fire warning signals through his compromised nervous system. Because he knew that scent too. Boot leather conditioned with mink oil, gun-cleaning solvent with a distinctive chemical signature, and underneath it all, the faint medicinal smell of the salve Rodriguez used to treat the shrapnel scars on his hands. The same Rodriguez who'd supposedly died in Iraq 10 years ago. Mac's vision blurred at the edges, As the nerve agent's effects amplified his stress response, his hands trembled against Kaiser's collar, muscle memory warring with the growing certainty that everything he'd believed about his unit's fate was another lie in a 20-year catalogue of deceptions. The tactical team had stopped their advance, taking defensive positions that suggested they knew about the third party in the woods. This wasn't extraction, it was a reunion. Hayes's voice crackled through the radio again, softer now, almost paternal. "You're starting to understand, aren't you, son? Death is just another kind of classification. Your boys didn't die, they graduated." Mac's legs nearly buckled. The classified documents pressed against his ribs felt like they were burning through his jacket, through his skin. "You son of a bitch! They're alive. Alive, functional, and grateful for their second chance." The nerve agent didn't kill them, Marcus. It evolved them. Enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, resistance to conventional interrogation techniques. They became perfect operators. Through the rain and darkness, Mac caught movement in the tree line. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with the fluid precision he remembered from 100 joint operations. Compact build, favoring his left leg where the Sarajevo shrapnel had torn through muscle and bone. Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez stepped into the light spilling from Mac's porch, very much not dead, very much not a ghost. 20 years had added grey to his temples and lines around his eyes, but the predatory awareness remained unchanged. He raised one scarred hand in greeting, the gesture mockingly casual. "Hola, Mac. You look like shit." Mac's world collapsed inward, all the grief and guilt he'd carried for 2 decades revealed as elaborate theater. The funeral he'd attended, the flag he'd presented to Rodriguez's widow, the sleepless nights wondering if he could have saved another brother. All lies. Kaiser's growl deepened, the shepherd sensing his handler's emotional collapse. The dog's loyalty was absolute, uncomplicated by the web of deception that had shaped Mac's adult life. Good dog. The only honest thing left in Mac's universe. The others? Mac's voice came out as a croak. "Thompson's running security for a pharmaceutical company in Prague," Rodriguez said, moving closer with the casual confidence of a man who knew his backup was in position. "Garcia handles wet work for a defense contractor in Colombia. Patterson trains special operators for countries that don't officially exist." Each name was another weight added to Mac's shoulders, another betrayal that compressed his spine until standing upright became an act of will. His unit, his brothers, had been transformed into government assets while he'd been left to rot with guilt and damaged neurons. Why? The question tore from his throat like shrapnel. Why leave me behind? Hayes' voice carried false sympathy. "Because you were the control group, son. We needed one member of the unit to develop naturally, to show us what the agent did without our modifications. Your suffering provided valuable data. 20 years of nightmares. 20 years of memory gaps and phantom sounds and the constant ache of Rex's absence. All of it reduced to data points in some classified medical study." Rodriguez stepped close enough that Mac could see the surgical scars along his hairline. Fine, precise work that spoke of government medical facilities and unlimited funding. "It doesn't have to hurt anymore, hermano. They can fix you, make you whole again. Like they fixed you?" Mac gestured at the scars, at the predatory stillness that had replaced his old friend's easy humor. Better than fixed. Enhanced. The nightmares stop. The guilt stops. Everything that's been eating you alive for 20 years. Gone. Rodriguez's eyes held the flat emptiness Mac had seen in career operators who'd crossed too many lines to find their way back. "All you have to do is stop fighting." Mac thought of Emma's laugh, of Sarah's voice tight with worry, of Kaiser's unconditional loyalty, the people he still had left to protect, to love, to disappoint with his failures. "And if I refuse?" Rodriguez's hand moved to the grip of his concealed weapon, casual, practiced, inevitable. "Then you become a liability that needs managing. Your family becomes collateral damage in a national security operation that never officially existed." The rain intensified, washing away tracks and scents and evidence. Perfect weather for making problems disappear permanently. Mac looked into the face of his dead friend and realized he was staring at his own future, empty, enhanced, and irredeemably lost. Mac stared at Rodriguez's scarred face and felt something crack open inside his chest, not grief this time, but recognition. The surgical scars weren't enhancement marks, they were repair work, damage control for a procedure that had gone catastrophically wrong. "You're dying," Mac said quietly. "All of you. The enhancements are killing you." Rodriguez's predatory stillness faltered for just a moment, a micro-expression that 20 years of friendship had taught Mac to read. Fear, raw, desperate fear beneath the chemically induced calm. "The agent didn't evolve you," Mac continued, pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. "It's been eating you alive from the inside out. That's why you need me. I'm not the control group, I'm the cure." Hayes's voice crackled through the radio, sharp with irritation. "Stand down, Mockingbird. You're experiencing cognitive distortion due to stress-induced neural degradation." But Mac was thinking clearly for the first time in 20 years. The memory gaps, the phantom sounds, the nightmares. They weren't symptoms of damage, they were symptoms of healing. His brain had been fighting the nerve agent naturally while his unit underwent procedures that masked the deterioration. "How long do you have?" Mac asked Rodriguez. 6 months? 3? Rodriguez's hand tightened on his weapon, but the motion was sluggish, delayed reflexes masked by pharmaceutical enhancement. "Long enough to complete the mission." "What mission? Dragging me back to become another lab rat in Hayes's experiment?" "No, hermano." Rodriguez's voice carried genuine regret now, the first honest emotion Mac had heard from him. Eliminating the last witness to Operation Lazarus. The words hit Mac like a physical blow. They weren't here to recruit him. They were here to bury him alongside the truth about Bosnia. His survival, his natural resistance to the nerve agent, represented a threat to 20 years of classified research. Kaiser's growl turned savage as the shepherd sensed the shift in tactical dynamics. The other team members were moving now, closing the perimeter with mechanical precision. Enhanced operators following enhanced orders to eliminate an enhanced threat. "Rex knew," Mac whispered. "That's why he attacked our own command structure in the bunker. He could smell what they'd done to the air, what they were doing to us." Rodriguez's face twisted with something that might have been pain. The dog was going to compromise the operation. Had to be put down. "You killed him." Mac's voice carried deadly calm. "My partner. My brother. You put a bullet in Rex because he tried to warn us. Hayes gave the order. Rodriguez caught himself, but the damage was done. Mac felt something fundamental shift inside his chest, 20 years of guilt and self-recrimination burning away like fog before the sun. Rex hadn't died because Mac failed to protect him. Rex had died protecting Mac from his own brothers, from his own command, from a conspiracy that turned soldiers into experimental subjects. The rain drummed against Mac's shoulders as he straightened to his full height, muscle memory flooding back from 1,000 combat situations. Not the damaged veteran Hayes had been monitoring. Not the guilt-ridden dog trainer mourning his partner. The operator he'd been before they poisoned him, before they broke him, before they tried to remake him in their image. "You made one mistake," Mac said quietly. Rodriguez raised his weapon with enhanced speed, but Mac was already moving. 20 years of accumulated rage and grief and betrayal compressed into a single moment of absolute clarity. "What mistake?" Rodriguez demanded. Mac smiled with predatory satisfaction as Kaiser's muscles coiled for attack. "You assumed I was broken." The shepherd launched himself at Rodriguez with 60 pounds of trained aggression while Mac rolled sideways toward the tactical team. His hands found the familiar weight of the Sig Sauer, muscle memory guiding his movements as automatic weapons chattered through the rain. Hayes's voice screamed through the radio. All units. Mockingbird has gone weapons-free. Repeat, target is hostile." Mac put 2 rounds center mass into the nearest operator and felt 20 years of lies die with the man's enhanced reflexes. These weren't his brothers anymore. They were Hay's creatures, their humanity surgically removed along with their capacity for independent thought. Kaiser's snarls mixed with Rodriguez's screams as the shepherd's teeth found flesh. The dog fought with the same savage loyalty Rex had shown in that bunker 2 decades ago. Absolute, unconditional, honest in a way that shamed every human motivation. Thunder rolled across the Virginia hills as Mac moved through the storm, no longer running from his past but embracing it. The classified documents pressed against his ribs like armor, proof of Hayes' crimes waiting to be delivered to people who still remembered what justice looked like. Behind him, Rodriguez's voice carried across the rain, weak but venomous. "You can't win, Mac. They'll hunt you forever." Mac reloaded without breaking stride, Kaiser padding beside him like a lethal shadow. "Let them come," he called back. "I've got 20 years of payback to deliver." The hunt was on. The ancient farmhouse emerged from the storm like a fortress, its stone foundation and thick timber walls built to withstand more than Virginia weather. Mac had chosen this property 15 years ago for its defensible position, high ground overlooking 3 approach routes, with multiple escape corridors through the forest. Now, as Kaiser bounded ahead through the rain, those tactical considerations felt like providence. Inside, Mac moved with mechanical precision, his hands working while his mind processed the magnitude of what he'd learned. Rodriguez alive, his unit transformed into government assassins. 20 years of grief revealed as elaborate psychological warfare designed to keep him compliant, manageable, broken. He pulled weapons from hidden compartments throughout the house, a Barrett sniper rifle behind false paneling, C4 explosive charges in the basement, communications equipment that officially didn't exist. The arsenal of a man who'd never truly believed the war was over. Kaiser watched from the doorway, the shepherd's dark eyes tracking Mac's movements with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Blood matted the dog's muzzle from his encounter with Rodriguez, but his tail wagged slightly when Mac looked his direction. Good boy, loyal boy, the only creature in Mac's life who'd never lied to him. "We're going to finish this," Mac told the dog as he loaded ammunition into tactical pouches. 4 Rex, 4 all of them. The secure phone rang, a different line than Hayes had been using, this one connected to encryption protocols that hadn't been updated since Mac's retirement. He let it ring twice before answering, knowing that hesitation would be analyzed by whoever was monitoring the call. Mac. Not a question. He knew who would be calling. Jesus Christ, Marcus. What have you done? Sarah's voice carried the controlled panic of someone watching their world collapse in real time. I've got NSA algorithms lighting up like Christmas trees. Half the intelligence community is mobilizing against a single target designation. Mac closed his eyes, feeling the weight of involving his sister in this nightmare. They killed my unit, Sarah. Turned them into enhanced assets and let me think they were dead. How long have you known? The silence stretched long enough that he could hear encrypted data packets cycling through the satellite connection. Sarah choosing her words with the careful precision of someone whose career depended on plausible deniability. I've suspected for 12 years, she finally admitted. Financial irregularities in black budget allocations. Medical research projects with no oversight. Personnel files that didn't match mortality reports. But you never told me. Because I thought you were safer not knowing. Because I believed they'd leave you alone if you stayed retired, stayed broken. Her voice cracked with genuine emotion. I was protecting you, Marcus. Or trying to. Mac loaded the final magazine and secured it in his vest, the weight familiar and comforting. They used me as a control subject. 20 years of nightmares and guilt while they studied how the nerve agent affected unmodified brain chemistry. The research is more extensive than you know, Sarah said quietly. Chemical enhancement programs across 4 continents. Hundreds of test subjects. You're not just a witness, Marcus. You're proof that their entire methodology is flawed. Your natural resistance threatens decades of investment. Through the window, Max saw movement in the tree line. More tactical teams arriving, this time with heavier equipment. Thermal imaging gear, electronic surveillance packages, the kind of hardware used for siege warfare rather than simple extraction. How many are coming? 2 full companies of enhanced operators. Satellite surveillance indicates additional support teams staging 20 miles out. Sarah's fingers clicked across a keyboard, accessing data streams that could end her career. Hayes has convinced the Oversight Committee that you've suffered a complete psychological break. He's been authorized to use any means necessary to contain the situation. Meaning this ends tonight, one way or another. Either you disappear into a classified medical facility, or you disappear permanently. Mac pulled the classified documents from his jacket and spread them across the kitchen table, photographing each page with a secure camera. Evidence of chemical weapons testing on American soldiers. Proof of a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military command. 20 years of war crimes documented in bureaucratic detail. I'm uploading everything to a dead-drop server, he told Sarah. Congressional oversight committees, investigative journalists, foreign intelligence services. If they kill me tonight, the world will know what Hayes has been doing. Marcus, listen to me. There's something else. Something I couldn't tell you over open channels. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. The enhancement program isn't just about creating better soldiers, it's about creating controllable ones. Chemical loyalty that overrides individual conscience. Mac thought of Rodriguez's empty eyes, of the tactical precision with which his former friend had threatened Emma and Sarah. Men stripped of everything that made them human, transformed into biological weapons that followed orders without question. They're building an army, he realized. They've already built one. Enhanced operators embedded in military units worldwide, waiting for activation codes that will turn them against their own governments. Kaiser whined softly, the shepherd's supernatural hearing detecting movement that Mac couldn't yet perceive. Time was running out. Stay safe, little sister, Mac said quietly. And remember, whatever else happens tonight, I chose this fight. He ended the call and picked up his rifle, the familiar weight steady in his hands as rain hammered against bulletproof glass. The real war was just beginning. Kaiser's ears swiveled toward the eastern approach, and Mac saw them, shadows moving through the storm with inhuman coordination. Enhanced operators closing the perimeter with mechanical precision, their movements synchronized like a military parade choreographed in hell. Mac activated the perimeter defenses he'd installed years ago, motion sensors and floodlights transforming his property into a kill zone. The first wave of operators froze in the sudden illumination, their enhanced reflexes momentarily confused by the tactical shift from stealth to exposure. The radio in Mac's hand crackled to life. Hayes's voice, calm and paternal despite the chaos. Marcus, you're surrounded by superior forces using technology you can't comprehend. This ends badly for everyone if you don't surrender immediately. Mac keyed the transmit button. Colonel Hayes, or should I say General Hayes. Congratulations on your promotion. Built on the graves of how many soldiers? Every war requires sacrifices. The enhancement program has saved thousands of American lives. By turning our own people into chemical weapons. Mac tracked movement through his rifle scope. 12 enhanced operators, maybe 15, more than his ammunition could handle in a straight firefight. You didn't enhance them, Hayes. You lobotomized them. A pause. Then Hayes's voice, colder now. Your emotional attachment to outdated concepts of free will is exactly why the program was necessary. Enhanced operators follow orders without the moral confusion that compromises mission effectiveness. Through the scope, Mac saw Rodriguez limping through the tactical formation, the left side of his face torn where Kaiser's teeth had found their mark. His old friend moved with the stilted gait of someone fighting pharmaceutical enhancement and physical damage simultaneously. Miguel, Mac called through the radio. How much of you is left in there? Rodriguez's response carried an echo of their old friendship beneath the chemical calm. Enough to remember what you cost us, hermano. Enough to finish this right. You want to finish it? Come alone. No backup. No enhanced reflexes. No Hayes whispering orders through your earpiece. Just you and me, the way it should have ended in Bosnia. The tactical teams held position, waiting for commands from operators whose decision-making processes had been chemically streamlined. Mac used their hesitation to key a final transmission to the dead drop server, confirmation codes that would release 20 years of classified documents to news organizations across 5 continents. "Rodriguez is approaching alone," Hayes announced. "Stand down, Marcus. Let us help you." "Help?" Mac laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Like you helped my unit? Like you helped Rex?" He descended from the 2nd floor, Kaiser padding beside him with predatory alertness. The Shepherd's loyalty was absolute, uncomplicated by the chemical modifications that had stripped Mac's unit of their humanity. Good dog. Honest dog. The front door opened, and Rodriguez stepped through, scarred, enhanced, dying by degrees as the nerve agent ate through his modified brain chemistry. In the harsh light, Mac could see the surgical precision of his friend's scars, the pharmaceutical pallor that marked Hayes's enhanced assets. "You look like hell, Miguel. Better living through chemistry." Rodriguez's smile held an echo of their old humor, but his eyes remained flat and empty. "They want you alive, Mac. Medical facility, comfortable room, all the answers you've been looking for. And if I refuse..." Rodriguez drew his sidearm with enhanced speed, the motion fluid and precise. "Then I follow orders. Like always." Mac didn't move, his own weapon hanging loose at his side. "You remember Bosnia? Really remember it? Not the modified version Hayes fed you?" For a moment, confusion flickered across Rodriguez's enhanced features. There was a chemical attack. Rex went crazy, had to be put down. Rex tried to save us. The chemical weapons were ours, Miguel. Hayes used our unit as test subjects for the nerve agent, and Rex could smell what they'd done to the air. "No." Rodriguez's weapon hand trembled slightly. "That's not..." "Hayes said you developed paranoid delusions, memory distortions from untreated agent exposure." Mac stepped closer, close enough to see the surgical scars along his friend's hairline. "Look at me, hermano. Really look. Do I seem delusional?" Through the window, enhanced operators maintained their perimeter, waiting for orders that would end 20 years of classified research with overwhelming firepower. But inside the farmhouse, 2 old friends stood in the space between truth and lies, between loyalty and enhancement, between the men they'd been and the weapons they'd become. Rodriguez's hand shook violently now, the pharmaceutical control fighting against buried memories that refused to stay buried. "I remember Rex attacking the command bunker. I remember Hayes giving the order to shoot him. Who pulled the trigger?" Rodriguez's weapon clattered to the floor as his enhanced conditioning finally cracked. "I did. Jesus Christ, Mac. I killed Rex because Hayes told me to." Kaiser growled low, sensing the emotional detonation, but Mac raised one hand to calm him. Truth had a way of destroying everything it touched, even 20 years later. Outside, Hayes's voice screamed through the radio, all units, eliminate both targets immediately." The final betrayal. Even his enhanced assets had become expendable. Rodriguez collapsed to his knees as his enhanced conditioning shattered completely, 20 years of chemical control dissolving like salt in rain. Through the window, Mac watched the enhanced operators receive their termination orders, weapons swinging toward the farmhouse with mechanical precision. "They're going to kill us both," Rodriguez whispered, his voice human for the first time in decades. Mac helped his old friend to his feet, feeling the weight of brotherhood that chemicals couldn't destroy. "Then we die like soldiers, not lab rats." The first explosion took out the eastern wall, as enhanced operators breached with military efficiency. Mac and Rodriguez moved as one, muscle memory overriding 20 years of separation and betrayal. Kaiser darted between them, the shepherd's instincts guiding him toward threats with supernatural precision. But Mac wasn't running anymore. The truth had burned away his guilt, his self-doubt, his willingness to hide from what Hayes had done. Rex hadn't died because of Mac's failure. Rex had died a hero, trying to save his pack from their own poisoned command. The firefight lasted 12 minutes. When the smoke cleared, enhanced operators lay scattered through Mac's home like broken toys, their chemical modifications useless against men fighting for redemption rather than orders. Rodriguez took 3 rounds protecting Mac's flank, his enhanced reflexes finally serving a human purpose. "Tell me, you got the evidence out," Rodriguez gasped, blood frothing at his lips. Mac held his dying friend, rain washing through the shattered roof. Sarah received everything. Congressional hearings, war crimes tribunals, the whole program gets exposed. Rodriguez smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time since Bosnia. Good. Maybe the others, maybe they can be saved. He died looking at the stars, his hand reaching toward Kaiser as if seeking absolution from the only creature present incapable of lies. 3 months later, Mac knelt beside 2 graves in the morning sunlight, Kaiser sitting patiently at his side. The markers were simple granite, one for Rex, one for Miguel Rodriguez, both inscribed with the same epitaph, "Faithful unto death." The congressional hearings had destroyed Hayes' program, scattered his enhanced assets to medical facilities where doctors struggled to reverse decades of chemical modification. Some would recover their humanity. Others were too far gone, their personalities dissolved in pharmaceutical solutions that couldn't be undone. Sarah visited twice a week now, bringing groceries and news from Washington, as the intelligence community underwent the largest purge in its history. Emma had returned to her veterinary practice, occasionally sending photographs of the dogs she was training for returning veterans. Normal dogs, honest dogs, creatures whose loyalty came from love rather than chemistry. Mac's new K9 training facility operated openly now, funded by congressional reparations and staffed by veterans who understood the value of trust between species. Dogs didn't lie, didn't betray, didn't transform their partners into experimental subjects. They simply loved with absolute fidelity, the way Rex had loved him in that bunker 20 years ago. Kaiser dropped a tennis ball at Mac's feet, tail wagging with innocent expectation. The shepherd had become something more than a companion. He was proof that loyalty could survive any betrayal, that truth would always surface when the right nose kept digging. "What do you think, boy?" Mac asked, scratching Kaiser's ears. "Ready to help some broken soldiers remember what honest friendship looks like?" The dog's bark echoed across the Virginia hills, carrying joy and purpose in equal measure. Mac stood slowly, his body bearing the scars of that final firefight, but his spirit finally free from 20 years of manufactured guilt. Behind them, the farmhouse stood rebuilt and reinforced, not as a fortress anymore, but as a sanctuary, a place where damaged veterans could learn to trust again, guided by creatures whose wisdom came from instinct rather than intelligence, from heart rather than mind. As they walked toward the training kennels, Mac felt Rex's presence like morning sunlight, not the ghost of guilt that had haunted him for 2 decades, but the warm certainty of a job well done. His partner had saved the unit after all, even from beyond death. The chemical weapons in Bosnia had killed Rex's body but preserved his mission, carried forward by another German shepherd whose relentless digging had finally unearthed the truth. Kaiser bounded ahead through the grass, chasing butterflies with the pure joy of a creature who had never been lied to, never been betrayed, never been anything other than exactly what God intended. Behind him, Mac followed at the steady pace of a man who had learned the difference between loyalty and control, between enhancement and healing, between the soldier he had been and the teacher he was becoming. The morning sun climbed higher over Virginia, illuminating a landscape where trust could be rebuilt one partnership at a time, where the honest love between humans and dogs proved stronger than any chemical weapon ever devised. Some things, Mac had learned, were too pure to be improved upon. Some things were perfect just as they were.